各位直播间的朋友们，大家好！非常非常的开心，今天晚上能够和我们这么多美丽的女士，在我们女世界和 EGRC 这样一个美丽的周六的夜晚，能够相聚在一起。那今天晚上呢，我们要举行一场非常特别的直播哈，我们大家也看到了镜头前各位非常非常漂亮的脸，那是为了庆祝我们的3月8号国际妇女节呢，我们的女世界和 EGRC 共同举办了这么一场叫做 Empowering Women 的这样一场特殊的活动。
Hi, good evening, everyone that's joined us today. I'm delighted to be here to welcome you to a very special celebration of International Women's Day. This event is being presented jointly by Educating Girls of Rural China and WeWorkingWomen. Thank you to those of us that are joining from around the world. It is evening for those of us in North America, and it is early in the morning for those of you in China. Thank you so much for being with all of us here today.
Thank you, Ashley. 那我是今天晚上的主持 Vera， 同时呢，我是女世界的 COO。那和我一起共同主持的呢，是我们的 Ashley。I'm
pleased to be a co-MC with Vera here today. My name is Ashley Au, and I am Executive Director for Eastern Canada for Educating Girls of Rural China.
大家可以看到哈，我们今天晚上活动呢，特殊的地方之一呢，就是其实今天晚上呢，我们的直播几乎是一场全英文的直播，因为我们所有的特邀嘉宾呢，他们都是讲英文的。当然了，我还非常期待哈，今天有一位嘉宾，据说他的中文很好，我还很想挑战他一下哈。一会儿我们直播的时候，我要悄悄的挑战他一下，他听懂了，他在笑啊。好，这第一关过了啊。好的，那我们首先呢要来请出我们2位今天晚上为我们开场的嘉宾，那她是女世界的创始人 Sherry 以及 EGRC 的创始人田青青，来为我们讲一讲我们为什么要举办今天晚上这么一场特殊的直播呢？
All right, so just before we move on, I'm going to quickly introduce, thank you so much to WeWorkingWomen for co-hosting this event with EGRC. Some of you may know WeWorkingWomen is the largest Chinese women's professional development platform in North America and tends to hold events all in Chinese. So this is one of their first events, and it's going to be all English language speakers. We've got 3 phenomenal women whose stories we're so excited to share with you. And the content tonight will be delivered mostly in English, and for the first time, also via Facebook Live. So now I'd like to bring to you and please warmly welcome the co-founder of WeWorkingWomen, Ms. Sherry Zhang, and founder of Educating Girls of Rural China, Ms. Qing Tian.
Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here today to celebrate with all of you the very important day, International Women's Day. And I feel we're all very fortunate. There's never been a better time in human history to be a woman. Today, the theme of the event is Women Empower Women. I'm going to talk a little bit about the EGRC and the WeWorkingWomen just in a second. First, I would like to formally introduce our 3 special guests. The first one is Farah Mohammed, and you will meet Farah very, very soon. I met her in 2016 in the summer in Beijing, and Farah founded Girls 20, many of them you know. The 2016, the Girls 20 Summit was in Beijing, and myself and some of our EGRC girls participated in one of the events. We met the 20 girls from all over the world. We were all very, very impressed. And later on, Farah, of course, chaired Malala Foundation in UK, so which is very impressive. I'm sure she has been devoting big part of her life and towards women empowerment. And the second guest is Sarah Kutulakos. I met Sarah even more than 4 years ago, maybe 7 years ago in Beijing. And she has been the managing director of Canada-China Business Council for Sarah 14 years. Yeah. And as many of you know, CCBC and Farah has been a great supporter of my work and EGRC. and also Sarah also initiated, used the CCBC platform initiative female women CEO project, I think in 2019. So I'm sure Sarah is going to talk about it. And the last guest today is Stacy Singler. And I have to be very proud to announce to all of you, Daisy is my family member. It's my daughter-in-law. She married my son about almost 4 years ago. I'm really impressed, not just she being my daughter-in-law and how much she has achieved at such a young age. And she devoted her, her knowledge, energy, passionately working internationally towards women, children, and women's mental health. So you will learn each of these 3 women's story very, very soon. And at EGRC for 15 years, we empower women through helping them achieve an education and further to help them develop their career and also the path of their personal development. On this path, I've met many, many individuals and organizations who share my passion and supported my work. Of course, WeWorkingWomen is one of them. And I met Sherry and Hua about the second year after they founded WeWorkingWomen. And since then, Sherry has been a very passionate supporter. So I'm going to hand it to Sherry. I'm sure every one of you tonight will enjoy this 1-hour conversation with these women leaders we invited. Thank you.
Okay, so now I just want to talk a little bit about how WeWorkingWomen empowering women. I think that it really comes to in the processing of growing WeWorkingWomen. In that process, we really have gained deep understanding of women's concern and needs. Not only do they want to access the information and resources to support their development, but also they want to improve their skills and have mentors to turn to for advice when they meet challenges on their path. Even more importantly, we have learned that women wants peers in the community for communication, for encouragement, and to advance together. I think WeWorkingWomen community and academy is like really fully support that kind of demand. And on the one hand, as a community, through our public WeChat account, we share the stories of women's growth, achievements, and information. And our online and offline events, not only sharing the knowledge, but also connect women from different industry and locations. Moreover, with our WeChat groups, they can find like-minded peers and mentors. That is why like so many ladies call WeWorkingWomen home. So that's really, and WeWorkingWomen Academy is just provide a series of professional development courses. So this one can give what they really need. So when we're talking about women, empowering women, we always thinking maybe it's really big deal, but I think it's just so many small things like added up together. One thing I really truly believe when we empowering somebody, it's not like one way, it's always benefits for both sides of us. It seems like WeWorkingWomen's motto is 彼此成就，共同成长. We achieve together, we grow together. So that's from me. And really, we are so happy today. We have these 3 beautiful guests. It's really fresh and new to WeWorking Women. I'm so looking forward.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Ching. I believe that we're going to have a great conversation tonight. 我相信今天晚上呢，我们一定会有一个非常非常棒的谈话。那3位呢，特别的来宾也为我们带来了3个不同的人生，3个不同的激励我们的故事。那我们也非常期待在接下来呢，我们的3组谈话中，各个嘉宾能够跟我们精彩的进行分享。
Coming up, we've got 3 amazing guests for 3 really interesting conversations. And take it away, Vera.
这位特别的嘉宾呢，她还有一个中文的名字哦，她的名字叫高诗如女士。那我们在介绍她之前呢，我们先来看一个1分钟的短片，了解一下。
特邀嘉宾高诗如女士。高诗如女士从2007年起担任中加贸易理事会执行董事长兼首席执行官。在她执掌这个加拿大最重要的促进双边贸易与投资组织的15年来，她是促进中加商业增长活动的领军者，她是加拿大企业探索中国市场的开拓者，她也是中国企业落户加拿大的协助者。自上世纪80年代，高女士就开启了她的中国之旅。她在中国大陆及台湾地区工作多年，她熟悉中国文化，能讲流利汉语。作为加拿大商界的领军人物，她于2019年发起了中加商业女性使命团，旨在鼓励和帮助2国女性首席执行官、企业家及创业者加强跨国合作，共创时代商机。女世界和 EGRC 热烈欢迎 Sarah Kutulakos 高诗如女士同我们一起庆祝国际妇女节。
All right. So with that, it is our very special pleasure to welcome, on behalf of Educating Girls of Rural China and WeWorking Women, Canada-China Business Council Executive Director and COO, Ms. Sarah Kutulakos, and this discussion will be moderated by WeWorking Women.
I'm gonna have several keywords to describe more about Sarah. There's what's called American born, and have a Greek husband, working on Canada, living in Taiwan, China, and speaks Chinese at home with her daughters, and so many things. So I'm gonna leave later to let Sarah to explain more. So Sarah, I have come to meet you because you are really the person who know in China and Canada business. Can you tell us how did you get interested in China, and why have you dedicated your career to Canadian China business?
Okay, well, before I answer that question, I just want to say how honored I am to be here among such amazing women. You know, both WeWorking Women and EGRC are 2 organizations I've looked up to for a long time, and my fellow panelists are amazing. So I'm just a business person here. I'm a little humbled, but I was a business major in university, and I wanted to do international business, and Spanish was a little easy in high school, so I thought, well, I should choose a language to study so that I could perhaps go to interesting places with a business career. So back in the mid-1980s, when Japan was really hot, I basically flipped a coin between studying Japanese and studying Chinese. And thankfully, Chinese won, and I started studying, and I ended up living in Taipei 3 times, including when I finished my degree. I bought a one-way ticket and I moved there because I figured the worst that could happen is I would teach English again, as I did as a student. But I ended up working for a computer company there called 创建资讯, Transcend Information, which was a startup at the time. Now it's a $1 billion company and one of the top Taiwanese firms. But back then it was just a small group of us. I think there were 50, and it was a real sort of startup environment. And I knew that I wanted China to be a part of my career from the beginning, and it wasn't always easy to build it in. So after I finished my MBA, a few years later, I went and worked for Eastman Kodak Company, back when all of you were still printing your pictures and most people in China had never taken a photo. And so there was a lot of very interesting things that happened at Kodak, particularly giving me opportunities to live in China. I ended up living in Beijing in 2004 for a year. And then around 2006, you all stopped printing your pictures, and it got a little boring working at Kodak. And it's a funny story. I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I was living in Toronto, not working at headquarters in Rochester. And every day about 3 o'clock, I would sit on the sofa in my home office and start reading the Harvard Business Review, and I would fall asleep because I was pregnant and I was really tired. And I would suddenly wake up and I'd go, oh my God, I fell asleep on the job. Somebody's gonna, I'm gonna get in trouble. And then I realized that nobody actually cared that I had fallen asleep. And I figured that was a good time to leave Kodak, because the action had definitely diminished. And so then after that, I got very lucky, and I was talking to companies in Toronto about what they might be doing with China, and the job running the Canada-China Business Council opened up. So I signed a 3-year contract 14 years ago, and every day is, something different in this environment.
Well, that's really so described from Taiwan to China, huh? Okay, so now you have led the Canadian-China Business Council for many years. Your day-to-day job is deal with the CEOs and the senior leaders of leading Canadian and Chinese business. How have you built your profile as a business leader in the predominantly men's world, and between both Chinese and Western cultures?
So in terms of the sort of gender part of it, it seems like I've always worked in male-dominated environments. Even though at Kodak I worked with some amazing women, I was often in rooms full of male engineers. And the same happens in a lot of the Canadian boardrooms now. And that doesn't bother me. And it's true that senior executives in our space are predominantly male. But I think the best way to answer your question is to be very good at what you do. Gender is much less relevant than knowledge and results. And I've seen this happen, in many different times. In fact, I remember back when I was at Kodak and I wanted to live in Beijing in 2004, and I was searching for an assignment that would get me there. And I ended up getting sent there by a female executive who lived in Singapore. And when I talked to her, she said, yeah, you've got the job. And I said, great, it's going to be really helpful that I speak Chinese. She said, I don't actually care that you speak Chinese. She said, I care that you know how to bring a product to market. So that always hit home for me that, it's really important to have that sort of core skill. And I think in running CCBC and bridging these two cultures, I think it's also very important to be able to show that I understand both contexts. So as an American who had moved to Canada relatively recently, I even had to do my little sort of Canadian education. And it still every once in a while surprises me how different little aspects of Canadian culture are from American culture. But on the Chinese side, I think having lived there so many times and, really been able to just immerse myself in the environment, I was able to make a lot of mistakes and learn things the hard way. And that gave me a really deep knowledge of Chinese culture. And so I try to make sure that I share that understanding with people. And we actually use that to try to help move the business communities closer together as well.
I heard about make so many mistakes, but we all make mistakes, right?
Right.
The courage to make mistakes first, right?
Right.
Okay, so can you tell me, there's any women business leaders that you met and inspired you in your early stage of your career?
So I think that, it's interesting to think about role models. And I think it's important to have role models and then to try to be a role model as well. And when I was trying to decide what job to take when finishing my MBA, I had a couple of different offers in New York City. It was a really sexy offer with a consulting firm on Wall Street that would have actually paid me a lot more money. And then I had this offer from Kodak where I had done my internship. And the woman who I would have reported to at this sexy consulting firm was kind of proud of the fact that she lived in Denver and her 2-year-old was there and she was working in New York City. And I remember they were all very happy as well that they all had gotten laptops so they didn't have to come into the office on Sundays. And I remember thinking, this isn't a great role model for how you might be able to strike work-life balance. Whereas at Kodak, the people that I had met during my internship and who I continued to meet really showed me that you could work very hard and you could have a really interesting life. And so I saw a lot of women like that at Kodak. And there were some interesting people that I worked for. When I took the job, I always had to figure out, how do I bring China into what I'm doing? And I took a job that had nothing to do with China at Kodak because I figured something would come up. And they were kind enough to let me do a 4-month training assignment in Shanghai when I started, even though my job didn't involve China. And I worked for a woman who was very, very unique. You know, you think about the expatriate life that a lot of foreigners have in China, and they live in these fancy, expensive apartments, and they, you know, it's a fairly expensive proposition for the company. She didn't want to cost the company very much money, and she realized that she was spending all of her time, she handled Greater China. So she was in Taiwan, she was in Hong Kong, Beijing, and Shanghai. And because she was always moving around those 4 cities, she said, I don't think the company should rent me an apartment. It's not necessary. She would just stay in a certain hotel in every city. She was very conservative. She wore these like cotton dresses. I never saw her in a business suit. And so she would leave a folded cotton dress in a filing cabinet in each office in each of those 4 cities. And she would use intercompany mail to mail books to herself. And I remember working for her. She said to me, well, I'm staying in the Lai Lai Da Jiudian. It was a 3-star hotel on the Bund in Shanghai. Actually, probably visible somewhere in this view behind me. And she said, but you can stay anywhere you want in Shanghai. But I said, well, I can't really stay in a fancy 5-star hotel every day if my boss is staying in this 3-star hotel. So we found ways to compromise. But that was an interesting view of, you know, somebody who was really working for the company rather than wanting the company to work for her.
That's really good.
And then I would give one other example that I worked with a lot of people early in my career who were doing amazing things and also telling me I could too, particularly that there didn't have to be this model of working from an office 40 hours a week, that you could do things differently. And that really empowered me. When I was pregnant with my first daughter in 2000, would have been the year 2000, my husband decided to take a job and move to Toronto. And while he was interviewing, I actually allowed him to interview in any city with a Kodak subsidiary, because I figured then I could make a case to keep working. And I went to my boss and I said, yeah, by the way, I'm having a baby in September, but we're also moving to Toronto in September. And I think I should just be able to work remotely from Toronto. And they made it work. You know, not every company would have been able to handle that, but that was really helpful for me to be able to balance things.
That's really from United States and then to Canada from there, right?
I got to Canada, yep.
Okay, so today our theme is it's women empowering women, and under your leadership, CCBC has started Women's Mission Initiative. And what's that all about, and why did you initiate that?
So we started doing a women's mission in 2019, and that one was live when we could still all travel. And we're doing one this year that's virtual. And I'm so pleased, Sherry, that you are one of our delegates. And we, you know, if we look at how many companies in Canada could be and should be doing business with China, just in order to promote their growth, there are so many that aren't. And so we said, well, you know, if you have all of these companies that can and should be doing business, why don't we choose ones that are being run by women? Because there's not enough female representation within my organization, for example, just in terms of membership. And there are very few barriers in China to being a woman doing business. So we've just tried to focus on helping nurture these delegates who, some of them are very experienced with China and some are just getting started, and to help them sort of mentor each other as well. And I have to say, we're now 4 weeks into the training, and about 2 weeks from the actual virtual mission. And it's been such an amazing experience seeing these women that are doing, everything from shoes to cosmetics to lobsters. And it's a great sort of picture of what Canada looks like economically.
Yeah, that's true. Like I really love the connection and that experience we learned from each other, and across the industry and also across the experience and the age group. Like we can see like very young and then very experienced, like everything, right?
Yeah,
and that's really great.
It's great.
Yeah, great experience. And you are the mother of 2 daughters, and you are a mother with a very global mindset, and teaching your children, I know, Chinese and French. And what are some of the things you think are important as a mother to empower your daughter to be as daring, as successful as you?
So I'm American. My husband is Greek. And we thought our kids should be able to speak as many languages as possible. So back early on, my husband said, hey, well, I'm going to speak Greek to them. Why don't you speak Chinese to them? So that was our little language lab experiment. And it worked very, very well. It's been great for me personally because I have somebody to speak to all the time. And we've even convinced them to speak to each other. So we hear Chinese all day long. But we also decided to send them to French school, not French immersion, but really it's the Lycée Français de Toronto, the French system. It's like going to a French public school in France. And I looked at it and I said, for my kids who have grown up in Canada, if they want to be prime minister, they basically need to speak French. And it's a big hindrance to me not to be able to. I speak all these crazy languages, but no French. And so, we had this logic of, they need to speak Greek because of their grandparents and their father. And in the end, they each speak 5 languages totally fluently, and they're very happy to take on more. And I think that has been really helpful to giving them a view to the world, that and travel. We've dragged them with us everywhere we've gone around the world. I remember one of my favorite memories was my oldest was 3 years old, and we were in Laos, and we were doing a hike up to a Hmong village where we stayed in the village elders' hut overnight. And she was very interesting to all the little kids. So there was a whole group of little kids following my daughter. But my daughter was only interested in the pigs that were in the village. So she was running after the pigs and all the kids were running after her. And, so starting really early, having them go to all kinds of places in the world has been, I think, very good for them. And my oldest even did her gap year in Shanghai last year. Well, we had made a move for a year as well on a sabbatical. And I keep hearing and reading about how Canadian students are so unwilling to go overseas. They're afraid or they don't want to go anywhere very different. And I think that, it's been important to us to create a kid that's not afraid to go anywhere.
Wow, that's really 5 languages. Wow, that's really a lot, a lot. Okay, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Sherry.
Well, thank you, Sherry, and thank you, Sarah. I can hear from Sarah's a few Chinese words that her pronunciation is fantastic. 中文非常好啊 Sarah
不敢当
太好了 My kids speak 3 languages and everybody's like, oh, they speak 3 languages and yours speak 5. Okay, so without further ado, let's welcome the second guest tonight. 接下来呢，我们要来介绍今天晚上的第2位特邀嘉宾了。他是我们今天也是相对比较年轻的一位嘉宾哦，他的名字叫 Daisy Singler。那首先呢，我们也要来看一个介绍他的短片。
特邀嘉宾黛西·辛格拉博士。黛西·辛格拉博士，他是一位临床心理学家和全球健康研究员。他在孕产妇心理健康领域研究的成就达到了全球领先水平。他曾在乌干达、肯尼亚、孟加拉国、印度和巴基斯坦国的农村地区工作， 工作重点包括对改善儿童成长、健康和发展，以及减少孕产妇抑郁的项目的发展和评估。目前，辛格拉博士发起了一项名为“峰会”的开创性倡议，旨在通过培训非专业心理学工作人士，为妇女、儿童及其家庭福祉提供必要的心理健康支持，从孕产妇心理健康领域生根开来，向外拓展。他的努力在帮助到越来越多的人。与世界和 EGRC 热烈欢迎 Dr. Daisy Singula， 同我们一起庆祝国际妇女节。
Okay, let's welcome Daisy Singla. Hi, Daisy.
Hi, Vera. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, I told my daughter about your story last week since our meeting. I was so impressed for our last meeting when we talked about your experience, that at such a young age, you experienced so much, you've been to so many different places, you impact so many people. So I told her about your story. She's 5 years old. And I showed her your picture. So she asked me, Mommy, is she a princess? Is she the brave princess? I said, yes. She said, I want to be that princess when I grow up. I want to be the brave princess that travels around the world. That is really,
very sweet.
Really wonderful and sweet. Yes. So Daisy, so as the daughter of immigrants to Canada, we all know that. Can you tell us a little bit about your family story and how your parents empowered you to get onto the career path?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for having me here. It's indeed an honor and a privilege to be speaking on this panel. A little bit about my parents, and I guess a little bit about where I came from. So I was born and raised in a small town of 30,000 people called Penticton, British Columbia. And my parents immigrated to Penticton back in the 1970s, so quite a while ago. And like so many immigrants, they experienced many challenges, from systemic racism to adapting to a new country, all while raising a family. A large family, in fact. And it was my parents' resilience, namely their ability to manage to respond to challenges, that really sparked my interest to pursue psychology. Their ability to attend to crises and overcome challenges. And so this really sparked my interest in psychology, namely, why do some people respond to challenges in a certain way while others respond in other ways? And importantly, my mother's story has really been a source of inspiration for me personally. She was introduced to my father when she was 19 years. She was about to go to med school. And she was introduced to my father through an arranged marriage. At that time, she was living in India. And she came to Canada. They agreed to marry after meeting, I think, for a day, less than that. And she came to Canada in her early 20s. And she always had a really strong interest in self-growth, as well as in psychology as a field, which really sparked my interest to pursue this field. But it was her relentless passion for self-growth, as well as her relentless support for us. We're 3 daughters, so her relentless support for us, that really facilitated my career and my interest to pursue psychology. So I would say, looking back, that it was my mother who was really my first mentor in my life.
Beautiful. You know, I am the first immigrants for my family, right? Mm-hmm. So listening to your story and how your parents impact you and how you achieve, that really encouraged me that I should really work really hard to impact my next generation and lead them to the right direction that they can pursue. And we all know that your academic interest started in psychology, as you mentioned, and your research has taken you all around the world. As I collected your pictures, I was so amazed that you've been to Uganda, Kenya, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, so many places. Can you tell us how you came to focus on maternal mental health?
Absolutely. So my interest in global health really sparked in 2006 when I first visited South Africa. At that time, I was in my undergraduate studies. I had just read Nelson Mandela's biography, and I was inspired to learn about this amazing country and learn about this important individual in history. So I visited South Africa, and I came to realize that many people don't have access to mental health services. In fact, most people don't have access to mental health services. And shortly after, I met a woman named Frances Aboud, Professor Frances Aboud, who was gracious enough to take me on as her PhD student. And Frances, another woman of strength and wisdom, pioneered parenting interventions or parenting programs to improve the health and well-being of children in many of the countries that you mentioned. So she worked in the most remote areas of sub-Saharan Africa. And like Sarah's previous boss, she stayed in very, very humble settings and taught me the ways of how a global health researcher can act in a way that's collaborative and in a way that's humble, which is really important for the work that we do as individuals coming from Canada and having the privilege to work abroad. In any case, Frances's program, we worked very closely with local NGOs, supporting local NGOs and communities to improve the health and well-being of children. And this is really important. And importantly, these programs were not delivered by us or other researchers from Canada or the US, but by members of the community that lived in the community. So it's very much a for us, by us model. Which is really important for sustainability and also to ensure that we are building capacity in those communities. So given that women really liked going to these parenting programs, they cared about their children doing well, growing up in a healthy way, it seemed like the perfect intersection to introduce the concept of maternal well-being, maternal health, maternal mental health, of course, not using any of the jargon, but introducing concepts of health and well-being in these parenting interventions. So we could not only improve outcomes among children, but also improve the lives of women. And the topic of maternal mental health is really important, not just in places in North America, but abroad. In sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, where rates of maternal depressive symptoms are as high as 25 to 40% of some of these rural communities.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And I always believe that empowered women empower the world. So what
Absolutely.
you're doing is really amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about the summit that you initiated? What is the problem that tackles, and how does the summit try to solve this problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So Summit, and there's a website that can probably explain it a lot better than I can. So www.thesummittrial.com. So the problem is that most people want access to effective interventions. They want access to effective mental health care. And our big challenge, and this is not something that's a challenge over there, this is a problem here in Canada, that 1 in 5 women experience perinatal depression, experience depression when they are pregnant or postpartum. But unfortunately, even fewer than that, so about 5% actually have access to minimally adequate treatments. And most of these women actually prefer talk therapies, so speaking to a therapist one-on-one. But the big problem is they don't have access to these therapies that we know are effective. This is a problem worldwide, but I really want to emphasize that this is a problem here at home. And so Summit really focuses on improving access to these effective talk therapies, specifically for pregnant women as well as new moms. And the way we're doing that is basically by expanding who can provide these treatments. So we're looking at, can non-specialist providers, so individuals with no previous experience, no formal previous experience, no PhD, no master's degree in mental health, in psychology, can we train people like nurses and midwives, and we've done this around the world with peers and teachers and community health workers, can we train these non-specialist providers to deliver these talk therapies that we know are effective, as effective as psychologists and psychiatrists? And if we can, I think there's real potential to reform our mental health care system.
Mm-hmm. So what are the personal takeaways that you have from your work? Has it changed how you think about your own mental health as a woman? Do you have advice for our audience today about, how we can be more supportive of women by promoting or better mental health awareness in our communities?
Yeah, great question, Vera. So two things immediately come to mind. The first thing that I've learned, and something that we espouse in our interventions, in our talk therapies, is live according to your values. So perhaps before even living according to your values, you may want to identify what's important to you. And we know from a clinical perspective, from a scientific perspective, that when we live according to our values, we tend to feel better. Mm-hmm. So that would be my takeaway from a clinical perspective. From a personal perspective, I think I've had the privilege and honor to work with many great people, and I have a whole cadre of excellent women in my life, and they've given me the opportunity to voice my opinion and to be heard. And so I would say, as a young woman, but also as a woman who's getting older, I would say that my advice would be to listen, and to listen to young women when they have something to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Daisy. And I really wish this summit trial goes really well so that you can influence more and more women.
Thanks so much.
Let's move on to our final guest. Her name is Farah Muhammad. And before we welcome her, let's watch a short video about who she is.
特邀嘉宾法拉莫罕默德。法拉莫罕默德，印度裔女性。年幼时，她随父母从乌干达以难民身份来到加拿大。这样的成长经历帮助她形成了强烈的职业道德观念以及对事物敏锐的好奇心。法拉女士的职业生涯开始于政界，在10年间，她与加拿大最资深的加拿大女性政治家们紧密合作。近年来，她最为人们熟知的角色是一位极富有激情与魅力的女性进步运动倡导者。她创立了非营利组织 Canadian G20， 而其中的 G 代表了 Girls。她旨在通过教育、企业家精神以及全球经验来培养新一代的女性领导者。法拉女士还担任 Malala 基金会的首席执行官。这个基金会受启发于诺贝尔和平奖最年轻获得者 Malala Yousafzai 的事迹。法拉女士也将在帮助女性成长这条路上继续耕耘下去。女世界和 EGRC 热烈欢迎 Farah Muhammad， 同我们一起庆祝国际妇女节。
好的，那接下来呢，我们就要有请出来我们的第3位嘉宾。Let's welcome our third guest tonight, Farah Muhammad, and our own Ashley.
Thank you, Vera, and thank you, Sherry and Vera. Sherry, our co-founder of WeWorkingWomen, who spoke with Sarah Koudelakos earlier, and Vera, who did an amazing conversation with Daisy. And now it's a real privilege to invite Farah Mohammed in to speak with us this evening. Farah, I feel like I have my work cut out for me today because I'm such a huge fan of yours, and you are one of Canada's and the world's most renowned champions for advancing the voice of girls and women. And I want to kick it off by just asking you, you came to Canada very young as a child, as a refugee. It actually just said that in the video in Chinese. You might not have heard or understood all of what was being said. It said all the wonderful, great things and accolades about you. But I thought we'd kick off by asking, like, what was that aha moment where you might have heard that calling because you've done such amazing things? So when did you get that spark to say, I'm going to really focus on advancing the voice of girls and women?
So before I answer that question, first of all, it's hard to follow Sarah and Daisy. So thanks for that. And congratulations to WeWorkingWomen, to EGRC. It's such a pleasure to join you guys tonight. And Ashley, I remember very fondly you taking the stage actually at Girls 20 and me being really nervous to ask you to be our moderator because I was worried that you'd say no, and you really upped our game. So to your question about an aha moment, I think that aha moments for me, there's not just been one. So I look at a combination of things. First of all, I went into politics. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, but I went into politics and I got this amazing gig on Parliament Hill. And I worked with a woman called Patty Torsney, who remains a very good friend of mine, and Anne McClellan. Patty was an MP from Burlington. Anne McClellan was a minister. And during the 10 years on Parliament Hill, I got to work side by side with these two phenomenal women who were encouraging, they were challenging, they were demanding, but they were demanding of me in the same way they demanded of themselves. And so I saw women in action in a very male-dominated field making a big difference. So that's the first thing I would say is I had, Patty, then I had Anne, then I left politics and I went to work with a woman called Judith Shamian, Dr. Judith Shamian, who was Canada's chief nurse. And she allowed me to sort of step into healthcare. So I went from politics to healthcare. Then I got a phone call from Belinda Stronach, helped me set up a foundation. I'd never set up a foundation before. And it was an incredible opportunity. So then I had Belinda, who was taking a big risk on me, right? This is a high profile woman, saying to me, let's build something together. So I had Belinda. And then of course, I spread my wings, I take a chance on my own self, and I set up Girls 20. And then I'm surrounded by these young women who just want to make their country, their lives, their families, themselves, all that they want to be. So I get constant inspiration. And then, of course, I end up working with Malala Yousafzai. So I think it's a whole bunch of aha moments through other people and how we interact with those people and building these networks of powerful women and girls who take on the world. And I would combine that also with me looking and sort of saying, things aren't actually that right. If we've got all these amazing young women and women working hard, making a difference, and the media still portrays us as bubbly and effervescent, but a man is, portrayed as strong and determined, I thought we've got to have more of, you can be what you can see. And so that sort of led me to trying to mentor and be mentored by other women and sponsored, and sort of thinking about how do you change the balance? Because we didn't see that many women until recently. We sort of have had a perfect storm, but we didn't see that women at the top. Whatever vertical you pick, whatever profession you pick, we didn't see enough women there. So I think it was a series of aha moments that sort of one led to another, and it just became something that was ingrained in me. And like Daisy, my mom, in fact, my father, they've always said to me, go off and do what you want to do. Don't worry about the stereotypes of what a refugee would do, or what a girl who's got heritage in India, born in Africa. Don't worry about what people say. You go off and you pursue your passion, because they came here with nothing after having everything. So it was like all those types of things fed my soul and gave me the platforms to help and to be helped. And that's what I think has been what has kept my interest and my passion for the advancement of girls and women alive for the last 20-something years.
Wow. I mean, Farah, you've had all these amazing positions, you know, and I guess opportunities, which I can see how grateful you are for. And I think through all of these different appointments, you've really become one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to what can governments and administrations do to give women a larger, louder, more prominent voice in conversations. And I wanted to just ask you, like, now that you've been involved in this space for so long, and there are like a lot of advancements that have been made, what do you see as the setbacks that we're facing now? And not just what can governments and administrations do, but what can the individuals that are listening here today, what can we do?
So let's tackle, that's a lot of that question, but let's tackle this. So first of all, from leadership and government, leadership actually matters, right? We can see that in a Prime Minister Trudeau who said, I'm going to make my cabinet 50%. I'm going to make sure that some of the appointments, many of the appointments are women. And then you look at Erdogan in Turkey, and you're not seeing any of that. Or you see Trump that just came out of America and, you know, basically showed us what bad leadership looks like when it comes to the advancement of women. So I think, first of all, who is making the decisions, who you vote for, what their platform says, what are they actually doing in terms of actions, not just words. And that stuff really does matter. And we have to pay attention when we go to the ballot box. I really, really need to do that. Second of all, we're now living in an extraordinary time of COVID, where we've seen a lot of the advancements. As I said, we sort of had a perfect storm where we made the argument about the economic advancement of women and what that would do to a GDP. We saw more women rising to the top. We saw the impact of diversity at boardroom tables, and then COVID hits. And we see a lot of women lose their jobs. We see women having to struggle now because of the, you know, having to work from home, balancing that with childcare. So there are a whole bunch of things that we need to do. We need to make better investments that provide the opportunity for women who are educated, who are determined, they're entrepreneurial, they're able to do the job. We need to provide investments that allow them to do that. Somebody once said to me, Farah, perhaps it's because of your social, I think it was your social and entrepreneurial background that you don't think that childcare is an economic issue. Are you kidding me? Childcare is a very economic issue. So we have to change the way we see things, right? We can't just say that that's something for somebody else to worry about. We have to combat unconscious bias. It is not true at all when people say, I don't have judgment. Everybody has judgment. There's a way to get around that judgment and realizing what our unconscious bias is. How do we view a woman versus a man in a particular role? You know, Sarah said it really well that, you know, she was working in male-dominated environments. It's different for all of us. The other thing I would say is for individuals, we each have very busy lives, but think about what you can do to mentor, to sponsor. Something as simple as, if you're invited to go to a networking event, take a woman who would not be invited to that event, take her with you, because you're building that network. You're opening up those opportunities. So each of us can do like individual things. We can vote the right way or a particular way. We can, you know, challenge ourselves and others, but at the very least we can do is we can bring along somebody with us who would not otherwise have the chance. And that, I think, is fundamentally how men have succeeded. You've heard about the old boys network. I've been quoted as saying, forget that one. We need a new girls network, right? If you want to use the boys and the girls. And that's sort of like what WeWorkingWomen is doing, right? Is creating this platform for women to support other women. One of the things that you'll hear a lot about is we need more women on boards. Well, why aren't women getting on boards? You've got lots of people who have the background. It's because the network's got to kick in. So there are so many things we can do as individuals, as part of a system, as part of a community that can keep the momentum going forward despite COVID.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and also for speaking to what individuals can do, because I've really had the pleasure of knowing you over the years, and Farah, like, you are a person that really acts on that. I think it's easy to say that we should go out and sponsor and we should mentor, but you've done that and you pass on opportunities and ideas so generously. So I thought, you know, we looked at that reel of you with Malala and Obama and all these amazing places. I know you've got a slew of other photos because you've accomplished so much. And I want to ask you about courage, because I mean, I work with educating girls of rural China, and I see a lot of younger women in my life, and sometimes it's about not feeling that we have what it takes. And you know, like today we've got a really broad audience on the line, and it's great for people to sponsor us and give us a hand, but you've made so many unconventional decisions, if I can say it that way. I mean, I think you've dared to jump from politics to nonprofit to a really big nonprofit with Malala, with a big foundation. And I know that you've taken on many other roles. Where does your courage come from? And what would you do to give others advice on how to find that courage inside of us?
So first of all, I think I get a lot of courage from the people that surround me, you know, much like I think it was Daisy that said, surround yourself with people who give you energy and believe in you and can encourage you. But look, I would say that I'm equal parts creative, curious, crazy, a little bit crazy, and committed. And I don't tread water well. What that means is I am entrepreneurial by nature. And so I'm always looking for something that's going to feed that beast. Right. So I don't know if you call it courage. I call it all the other C's, right? I say that it's sort of a combination of all those other C's that make me take on challenges. And, you know, I think that I'm sort of built for, I want to make an impact. And actually, if I'm not making an impact, then that's what keeps me up at night. Right. I've been given these incredible opportunities. Yes, I've worked hard. I always say a lot of people opened the door and it was up to me to stay in the room. You know, I kind of feel like it's such a shame if I don't take those opportunities. And so I wouldn't say that I always have been comfortable with risk. I got older, I got more comfortable with risk, but for a long time, I wasn't willing to take the risk on myself. And then all of a sudden I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take the risk on myself. And the worst thing that's going to happen is I might stumble a little bit. I'll get back up. And when you take that sort of mentality, you can do things like what Sarah has done and what Daisy has done, what you have done. I mean, all of the people on this screen that I'm looking at, Ching, you know, like everybody has done something that is extraordinary, or you wouldn't be on the screen today. So I think we all have to sort of own what it is that we're capable of and go for broke. And, you know, for me, I don't have the responsibilities that others have. And so I kind of feel like I've been able to make decisions that really excite me. And I'm thankful, I'm grateful. I am so grateful to all of those people that I mentioned, because they also took a chance on me, right? These are things called partnerships.
Wow, we're so grateful that you took those risks and made those crazy decisions, because you've blazed a way as a role model for so many of us that now can imagine different possibilities.
You know what, Ashley, you're going to make me blush, which is very hard for a brown person to do. So just like, just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Farah. That's my job today. I want to come back to the subject of girls, because Girls 20, I think was really your baby. You founded that, and you thought about this certain period in a woman's life that I think is ripe for intervention, or maybe opening her eyes to a lot of different possibilities. And I know that you're also a really engaged aunt. You have a niece that you adore. And I also want to bring up the subject of girls because of educating girls of rural China. I know a lot of our girls are tuning in today early on their Sunday morning to hear from you three amazing speakers. So I thought I might ask you, now you shared with me that you had a significant birthday recently.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a point of
30. No, that's not true.
but like, considering your body of work and maybe retrospectively, what are the things that you wish you knew you're at that early, that I would say the girls stage? So what do you classify girls as in the Girls 20 age range?
So it's interesting that you should say that, because we've realized, you know, at the time the Girls 20 brand came because it was a play off the G20, and we're actually going through a rebranding and looking at our name, because girls that we talk to are actually young women. They're 18 to 24. They're in that sweet spot. Look, I would say, and this is kind of tough. There's so many things that I would want. I wish I would have listened to. And the one thing I think that sticks in my mind is it's a marathon, right? Our lives are a marathon. They're not a sprint. So you can actually take the time to enjoy some of the wins, enjoy the work, enjoy the moments. And I regret that I didn't sometimes do that. I regret that I didn't keep a journal and record those moments and then go back. And I've just started doing this. I was on a panel and somebody said she started to keep a voice journal. So, once a week or something, she records, and she's been doing this for years, and she's sort of seen how her voice has changed. So think about that. Like, I wish I would have captured moments. And for all these young girls that are paying attention, don't be in such a rush. Know that you're going to get there, but don't worry about the timeline, right? Just enjoy what you're achieving, build on that. And so I would just sort of say, I hate that saying, is stop and smell the roses, because roses have thorns on them and bad things happen from that. But, I would say just sort of enjoy the moment, really appreciate the moment that you're in, because I think there are lots of moments that I've had that I didn't really appreciate where I was in that moment. And I think maybe it sounds hokey to some, but hitting 50 and looking back, and even some of those pictures that you guys just showed, I remember the moment when I see the picture, but it takes something like that to remind me. But these are young women, and with Ching and her team helping and advising them and helping them along, I would just encourage them to take a deep breath and not feel so much pressure, because the world would put a lot of pressure on you anyway. Don't put the pressure on yourself. And I hope that that's helpful.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I think that's something that all of us can take away today at any time, wherever we are in the marathon. Farah, thank you so much for
Thank you.
candidly sharing your insights and your wisdom, which I knew you would be so candid about. And I'm going to pass the mic back to Vera. We'd like to welcome WeWorkingWomen co-founder Sherry Zhang and EGRC founder Ching back, as well as our other guests, Sarah Koudelakos and Daisy Singla, to join us together.
Thanks so much for having me, and congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Just a little bit update about our live stream tonight. We have 1,500 people that's watching us on the Chinese platform. And we're also live on Facebook, on both EGRC Facebook and WeWorkingWomen Facebook. So almost 2,000 people are watching our live show tonight. And I saw that there are a lot of messages, hundreds of messages saying that they are so encouraged and so inspired just by listening to your stories and listening to your experience that you shared.
I just want to, there's a couple of questions, like I see so many people leave messages. Yes. There's a couple of questions I just want to read here. And one question for Sarah, just saying, Sarah, please speak in Chinese. Let us listen about that, hear about that.
不知道你要我说什么吗？
说个绕口令吧。
我最近在想，我应该加入 WeWorkingWomen， 因为他可能会给我更多机会，天天讲国语吧。
Wow. Okay, so I think that's gonna be like satisfy that girl. And there's another girl called Monica asked how to prepare yourself to a totally different area. When do you think you are ready to change? That's like the question for Farah.
How do you prepare yourself? So I think there are a couple of things. I mean, I'll just take my example. Whenever I went to a different country, I would always call the Canadian ambassador to that country. I would do my homework. I would speak to people. If I was looking at a different industry, I'd say, okay, what is this industry? So do your homework. Somebody once said, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So it's really important that you take it upon yourself, talk to people, read stuff. If you can, going to a different country, try to taste the food before you get there. There are so many creative things you can do depending on where you live, and try to, immerse yourself in that newness. Don't just sort of say, okay, I'm going to hope for the best, because you're not going to maximize everything that you can. And in terms of being ready, I'm a big believer in trusting your gut. I think we are the masters of our own path. And, the flip side is if you don't trust your gut, you may never do anything. So I think it's a matter of trusting your gut and really finding the knowledge base. I'm wowed. Like I really, truly, I'm wowed by the fact that Daisy, you've been to that many countries. By the way, you went to Uganda, which is where I was born. And Sarah, I think about myself, like you know, the only thing you don't speak French. If you did speak French, I'd be like, Sarah for prime minister. So I wouldn't give that up. But I would say, like, you really do what these two women have done. You know, you follow your passions and you immerse yourself, and you go and you feel and you smell and you taste and you look and you listen. And that's really, really important. And I think that's how you best prepare yourself.
And first of all, thank to our audience, passionate, so many people. So I'm sure there's many WeWorking Women from WeWorking Women platform. Also, I know our team member in China and many EGRC students and graduates are tuning in today. And I'm just thinking, you know, a practical, you know, we're going to eventually, we record this event and some conversation we're going to translate into Chinese for our girls who maybe didn't totally understand the conversation, because I think it's very important for everyone who are interested to get a full benefit from this event. And again, I want to thank Farah, Sarah, and Daisy, and very inspiring. I think just like Sherry said, I felt the same way. You know, there are today, Monday, this is the occasion of International Women's Day. There's Mother's Day coming, and in the fall, there's International Girls' Day. So there's many occasions. Actually, every day we can think about this, women empowering women, start from very small. And also I just add a little bit to Farah's advice, you know, find something close to your heart. Start with something small, you know, help somebody around you. Maybe it's your sister, it's your cousin, it's your neighbor. I think together, you know, you will see that person, it might benefit from your help, and one day will get out there to inspire others. I think this is how the world works. And I think, you know, it's very important to improve the lives of female, half of the humanity. This is very crucial to our future, to the future of the world. Of course, on this journey, we need men, we need our father, husband, brothers to join, to support us. I think we can achieve this common goal. And I hope everybody have some, I was told, you know, I think three of you, each one already gave lots of good advice to the audience, but I still want to ask you, three of you, if everyone has this one message, what do you want to deliver to our audience for them to take away?
I can go first.
Sure, great.
I think the piece of advice I'd like to give is figure out what you're passionate about and find a way to work that into your life or your career. I mean, that's what I did with China and Chinese. And, you know, sometimes it plays a big part, sometimes it plays a small part. And I'd actually, Ching, like to give a shout out to you. I mean, what you've done with EGRC is something you're so passionate about. And I think you've brought a lot of people along in that to support you. And you were the winner of our 5 at 50 women's category award process that we did last year. And I think that was a huge recognition of the work that you've done. And that's something very worthwhile to be passionate about. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, given that we're short on time, I would say take a risk on yourself, because if you don't take a risk on yourself, nobody else will.
And I would just add on to what Sarah and Farah said, which is to pursue your dreams unapologetically. Too often we are apologizing for our strengths as well as our successes. And I think we're turning a new leaf now. So my thought is to pursue your dreams unapologetically.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think, you know, think about every one of us, there's something maybe hiding still, your passion and your potential. it is very important to discover it, have the courage to, to pursue your passion. I also want to thank our organizers tonight. I think Vera, there's Sarah, Farah, and Vera.
We rhyme tonight.
Actually, and Vera and Sherry, they spend hours and hours to put this together. And I really want to thank you. This is a really wonderful, successful event. I'm sure everybody, is feeling the same way. I want to thank you.
再次感谢在直播间陪伴我们一直在观看的小伙伴们，我看到大家一直在积极的发言，一直在和我们热情的互动。那今天晚上我们的这一场由女世界和 EGRC 共同举办的 Women Empower Women 的这样特殊的活动呢，我们就要告一段落了。那我们也非常希望接下来呢，我们能够请到我们更多优秀的嘉宾，能够到我们的平台上来分享更多激励人的故事，因为我们相信赋能女性就是赋能世界。我们也希望通过这些赋能的故事能够影响到更多的人，能够帮助到更多的人，然后也希望大家能够度过一个非常美好的周末。那我们下一次再见，拜拜。
Hey, International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, Farah, Daisy, and Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.